You're listening to the Geek Watch Podcast, episode 67. How many dragons does it take to destroy the internet?
This is the Geek Watch Podcast with Brian Hatcher and Mandy Petrie.
Greetings, Geek Watchers, and welcome to episode 67 of the Geek Watch Podcast. I'm Brian Hatcher, and with me, as always, Geek Watch's own resident geek goddess, Mandy Petrie.
Hello, Brian.
Well, we have a little Endgame news. Endgame keeps chugging along. We got some Disney on television news, which is not Disney Plus. We got some more television news coming up, and then we're going to have to talk about why last Sunday broke the internet. But before we do that, usually at the beginning, if we have a memorial to give, we normally do it. And so today we have a memorial over the weekend. The YTMND.com website died.
Oh, okay. That's not at all what I thought you were going to talk about. Okay.
Oh, well, what do you think I was going to talk about?
Well, it always comes in threes, and we had Peggy Lipton, we had Tim Conway, and we had Doris Day all pass away. That
is true.
Mm-hmm.
What I was bringing up was, of course, YTMND stands for You'reTheManNowDog.com. Are you familiar with this website?
Nope, not a bit.
This was an artifact of the early 2000s.
Artifact.
Yes. This was during the Wild West of the internet days. It was a website where you could create a web page using a GIF and a loop file, a sound file of some sort. Basically, it was called You're the Man Now Dog because the first little web page it was created by the founder of the site, which was basically a tiled GIF of Sean Connery with a sound clip from Finding Forrester where he goes, "You're the man now, dog!" And he would just, of course, play that over and over again.
Okay.
To people who are not familiar with this site, basically this is where memes used to come from.
Oh, okay.
And so there were tons and tons of these pages. I mean, gigabyte by gigabyte by gigabyte of basically these really simple, goofy pages that had tiled GIF files, these sound loops.
Is that where Dancing Baby came from?
Yes, there was a Dancing Baby page.
I can vaguely remember the Dancing Baby. I guess the earliest thing I can think of was Star Wars Kid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's the earliest that I can remember.
Yeah, so basically you had these, they either were still GIFs or animated, and they would either be in the center of a black page or it was tiled throughout the page, and then you'd have basically text that was the old school 3D text.
That was like neon?
Sometimes, yeah. Basically, this was the birthplace of the meme, of the internet meme, and also, like I said, this was during the Wild West days of the internet. Nobody was really monitoring it. You could make any kind of page that you wanted, and so most of them were pretty crude, pretty rude. This was before Me Too. This was before cancel culture. If people wonder, why James Gunn posted some of the tweets that he did, go to Wayback Machine and check out this webpage because that's where a lot of this came from. People did not care what they said. They just wanted to be as nuts as they could be. And it was a comedy page that, again, it was the Wild West. Nobody was monitoring it. Nobody cared. It was the internet. Only kids were on the internet. So kids just went crazy with this thing. I
just remember chat rooms. I mean, that's about as crazy as I got on the internet. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But, it was for the longest time. It was, as I said, it was a testament to what internet used to be like. And over the weekend, I hadn't been to You're the Man Now Dog for a long time.
Why would you need to? Now we have read it.
Yes, exactly. But somebody noticed that the page had went down. The server had crashed, and they're not sure if they're going to put it back up again. And so if you go to that page, you see a message, basically that there was a huge server crash, and it wiped out the entire database. And so, again, not the most politically correct place, but it was a part of internet history, and thought why we'd bring that up today. Now, I was checking out Endgame's numbers today, and It has now crossed the $2.5 billion mark at this point.
It's still number one.
Still number one.
Nothing knocked it out.
No, a lot of people thought that Detective Pikachu might do that, but and it did really well, and I think it made like $50 million, I believe, in its opening weekend, which they thought it was going to do. But surprisingly enough, that was not enough
to get number one.
To get number one, because Endgame is just cooking along. It's still doing well. Now, it still hasn't made more money than Avatar. It'll need to make a couple $100 million more to do that. But a lot of people are saying it's going to.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it will or not. This is a lot of money for 3 weeks. And like we said before, I don't know if this is a huge explosion that's going to die out quickly or if it's going to continue to go on. But some people are projecting that it will break the $3 billion, which it will be, of course, a milestone because no movie has ever made that much money before. I tell you what, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring. I'm going to jump off the ledge. I'm saying it right now. Endgame wins the Oscar next year.
Okay.
I'm going to say it. Now, I could be totally wrong, but I'm sticking my neck out there. I think that the combination of the amount of money that this movie is making, the fact that there are 21 movies that led up to it, as in the Return of the King effect, I think just because I feel that the Academy, it's really important to them now more than ever to appear relevant. It will at least get a nod, but I think it's actually going to win it. I really do. And the reason because again, I think that with the Academy, it's going to be really important for them to appear like relevant, although Avatar got the nomination but didn't win. So for me, I would bet even money that it will get the nomination. I think saying that it's going to win is a little iffy, but like I said, I'm going to stick my neck out. I'm going to say right now, it's going to win. And of course, when Oscar time rolls around, if it doesn't win, feel free to mock me all you want. So if that's the case. Now, continuing on with the Disney news. Now, we, of course, know that Disney, they're coming out with their own streaming service, Disney Plus. But as owner of ABC, of course, we know that they have a third share in Hulu with ABC. Disney is getting ready to buy out Comcast Hulu stake, which will give them controlling interest of Hulu. So that'll give them two different things to go. Now, if you remember, Comcast was the one who was in the bidding war with Disney to get Fox, and they were going back and forth. And so ultimately, Disney was able to pull out the purse strings and win that.
Pull out that Mickey Mouse money.
The Mickey Mouse money, which, of course, with Endgame, they're making even more Mickey Mouse money. So they're still having to value Hulu before the deal's going to go down. So it could be, there's no telling how much they're going to be able to, it's going to cost them to buy out Comcast, but Comcast feels like this is the play. And once the value's set down, regardless, Disney's not going to have a problem paying for it. What I also understand is Comcast, they're going to continue to allow NBC program because Comcast owns NBC, at least for a couple of years. Hulu will still have access to that. And then past that, I guess that'll be up to Comcast to decide whether they do a re-sign or whatever. I suspect that that's going to be the case unless some other streaming service gives them a better deal and gives them a viable option for streaming their content. I figure they'll stay with Hulu, even though Netflix is still the number one streaming service at this point. But with Disney taking the reins, who's to say what's going to happen? And I would suspect that Hulu will be offering Disney Plus as an option. So that gives Disney even more of a foothold. So in a couple of years, who can say? Hulu may be, it's already a major player in the game, but even bigger now than it was. So Comcast might stick around for the ride, but I guess that we'll see. Speaking of television, there's a couple other pieces of television news that I did want to talk about. And one thing I'm really excited about that was announced this week, it has been announced, Season 4, Rick and Morty. We are finally. And it's going to be this year. It's going to be in November.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, I mean, we all knew that Rick and Morty had been signed for a ridiculous amount of episodes. So them going back into it, it wasn't going to be like it was before, where they knew they had 10 episodes, 12 episodes, and that was it, and they didn't know about anything after that. But now they know that they've got many episodes and seasons ahead of them, that they've signed the contract, that we may not have this 1.5 to 2 year wait between seasons, which I know that some of the Geek Watchers out there have complained about it. Welcome to my world, because when I was growing up, Star Wars movies, that's how long you had to wait between movies. Mm-hmm. So welcome to my world and my pain. I know exactly what you're feeling.
Or the Whovians out there.
Oh,
now you know what the Whovians feel like.
Right, between old Who and new Who. Absolutely. Because that was a long wait with a TV movie, and that was about it. Do you watch a lot of Rick and Morty?
I've seen a few episodes, but that's about it.
It's a different animal.
I know it parodies, parallel universe kind of thing, and traveling.
Well, I mean, the Council of Ricks is basically a parody of the Council of Reeds, so...
And Rick and Morty was supposed to be like Doc and Marty.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, of course, they changed that up to make it... very nihilistic, very weird, and now that they know that they've got a little bit of breathing room, that they can stretch things out a little bit more, that'll really help with their storytelling a great deal. And hopefully we'll start to get answers to some of the things that's been left behind. Is Beth the clone or not? Which we don't know.
But it sounds like... sounds kind of like Futurama. They set all this stuff up that, pays off, and set up things in the first episode that pay off in the last episode.
Right.
So, maybe that could be where Rick and Morty is going.
Oh, yeah. And, of course, at this point in Season 3, we saw evil Morty take over the Citadel. It was an interesting, I would say, like in Doctor Who, like every once in a while you get an episode that the Doctor is not in. Mm-hmm. This, in a weird way, even though this was the Citadel of Ricks, our Rick and Morty didn't play a huge part, if anything at all, in that episode. But we got to see what was going on in the Citadel. And, of course, with evil Morty winning the presidency, and after that, executing some of the Ricks on the council as in a power play, what that's going to mean for the rest of the show, because now we may be getting an opportunity this coming season to see what's going on. But for the most part, I think we'll get trolled a little bit, because that's part of the joy of the show. But I'm looking forward to that in November, so that gives us something to look forward to there. Where I've been told, and this is another rumor on another television show, and I don't know if this is true or not, take it with a grain of salt, but the rumor, the standing rumor right now is that we may get a Christmas episode of Doctor Who this year. So we won't have to completely wait until next year before we get another episode, but nothing has been confirmed yet by the BBC as far as I know. Of course, once we hear something more about that, we'll definitely bring that up. One more piece of television news for network television, and this was done at the 11th hour, but ABC has canceled Whiskey Cavalier.
Oh, the Lauren Cohen show, yeah. So we might get her back on Walking Dead.
A lot of people are saying that, but right now, what Warner Television is trying to do is they are trying to find another venue for the show. Mm-hmm. And
like Netflix did with Lucifer.
Right, mm-hmm. Exactly. Or how...
Which has been a really good season so far, what I've seen of it.
Or, the Fox show, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, that it was canceled out of Fox and then was picked up by NBC.
Okay.
And so, with this day and age, it's possible that shows can be canceled.
Jump networks.
And they jump networks. It happens all the time now. So, it doesn't necessarily mean that Lauren Cohen is coming back to The Walking Dead. And even if she was... It's going to be a little while anyway, because, of course, now they're already filming. It was like last week they started filming this next season of The Walking Dead. Mm-hmm. And so they're already going on that. So it wouldn't be until next season anyway, before we saw her.
And also, Lauren Cohen had an arc on Supernatural in some of the earlier seasons. And this is the last season of Supernatural coming up. So... if either she or maybe the writers or something showed interest in getting her back for the last season, and that could happen,
Well, I mean, obviously at this point she's waiting around to find out what happens with Whiskey Cavalier. When I saw the show, I mean, it looked like, and I think we may have talked about this before, but it looked like a really great premise for a movie, but I wasn't sure how it would work for an open-ended television show. One, because since it's a globe-trotting show, it's expensive. It's not like you can shoot in a studio. You're going all over the world, literally. And so it can be a very expensive show to produce. And also, the two main characters, there's that will they or won't they type of a thing. And you can only do that for so long in any kind of a story. I mean, stories are about asking questions. But once you ask the question, you have to eventually answer it. And it seems like that the main narrative thrust of Whiskey Cavalier is that tension between those two characters.
Okay.
And once you answer that question, usually the show doesn't really go on after that. The best example of that, I would say, is The X-Files, which went on for years and years. But the minute they answered that question between Mulder and Scully, the show didn't really last much longer after that.
Now, I never watched Whiskey Cavalier, but my aunt did, because she was looking forward to it, because she thought it was going to be like, badass guys and stuff going around and doing all this stuff. But when she watched it, she said it was hokier than I thought. And, and I love hokey stuff. I do. Yeah. But if you're going into it thinking it's going to be one thing, like if you're going into Z Nation thinking that you're going to get Walking Dead, you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
But if you go into Z Nation knowing what it is, you're going to have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
So, those are the sort of things, that's what I look at. I love hokey stuff. I do.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it was
campy.
Yeah. Well, the trailers painted it very much as an adventure comedy, and there was definitely comedy elements to it. So, whether or not we're going to see Lauren Cohen return to The Walking Dead, it's too early to tell at this point. And even by then, of course, the one thing that I would have wanted to have seen would be Maggie and Michonne deal with the issues they had between them. Because, I mean, there was a point where they weren't talking. Things have kind of changed with Michonne, but, of course, we also know that at the end of this season, Michonne leaves. And they've already said this is going to be a huge, major event when she leaves. She's leaving with a bang and not a whimper. And so what exactly happens, of course, they're playing that very close to the vest. They're not going to tell us, obviously. We're going to have to wait to see that. But that confrontation between Maggie and Michonne doesn't look like that's going to happen, because I don't believe she'll be back in time for that. Well, I mean, depending on when Michonne leaves. Because, of course, they split these seasons in half. So if she stays to the second half, it's possible. But everything I'm seeing right now, it sounds like she's going to be leaving the first half. And if that's the case, well, then that's that. So, I mean, we'll monitor that situation, and we'll see how that goes. Now, finally, we're going to have to bring this up. And I don't watch the show, but I know you do. But apparently, Game of Thrones blew up the internet.
That was the only thing that got blown up.
I would say so. Well, folks, let's just say that we may be getting into spoiler territory if you've not seen Game of Thrones this week. Last Sunday's Game of Thrones. But okay, Mandy, you have the floor. What did you think?
Oh, it's not like we didn't see this coming in this particular season. Usually in a season we get 10 episodes. This one we only got 6, so we're lacking 4 episodes here. Now, our entire run of 7 seasons, Daenerys Targaryen has been level-headed no matter what was happening to her. When she was being sold as a sex slave, when her husband died, when she lost her baby, when she was executing people, and then, when her dragons were born and all this, she has been the most level-headed. She would listen to her counselors, everything, all up until this season. Then she started going Mad King. Now, they've always talked about her father just being absolutely crazy, absolutely nuts, Mad King. And it only happened, I would have liked to have seen it a little bit more gradual, but she has said from the beginning, I am going to take what is mine with fire and blood. And that's what she did. She came up to the city, and her advisors told her, if the bells ring, they have given up. That's their white flag. And the bells rang, and you have this very long, drawn-out moment where she absolutely decides, that's it, I'm crushing the city, right from razing it straight to the ground. So she burns the city to ashes. Man, woman, child, baby, did not matter. Everyone was burnt. Now, I was okay with that. What upset me was the ending for the two characters of Jaime and Cersei. Now, of course, with me, we didn't see their bodies, so we don't know that they're really dead, kind of thing. Okay, and especially in this episode, because we were made sure to be shown the people who were dead. Someone helps Arya, a mother and child help Arya get out of the street, and then we see their charred remains. So we are, in this episode, we are absolutely, it is shown this person has died, and we don't see their bodies, and we actually don't see the bodies of the Hound or the Mountain, the big battle of the brothers, and that was beautifully done. And if they did die, that is very cathartic. They ended very well. Great circular storytelling. But when it comes to Cersei and Jaime, they both had this beautiful 7-season story arc, and the way that they ended was just, they deserved more. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did. They deserved more. So, I foresaw Khaleesi, burning the city. That didn't come as a surprise to me. I wish we had built up to it a little bit more. Yeah. Other than that, it was fine. But they are trying to pack into 6 episodes what, should have been more, or if we could have had it a little bit from last season. But no, last season, perfectly level-headed, listening to all of her advisors, taking good advice, leaving bad advice behind up until now. And so, but that's what disappointed me as someone who's watched the show, not read the books, but I've watched as a fan of the show. So this is our first season that we've had without source material, without George R.R. Martin. Maybe he's just in a room somewhere at HBO telling them, a few things, and they decide, nope, not going to do that. I'm not certain. Yeah. But that's where I felt, but I can see why so many fans are just so upset with it. But that's where we are right now.
Yeah. Well, I saw a meme on Facebook that I think describes the situation the best. It's like, now you know our pain when the anime outstrips the manga. Yes. But I mean, I definitely knew we had to talk about this. Like I said, I've only really seen the pilot episode, but you couldn't really escape. If you were anywhere on the internet at all, you couldn't escape the memes. Mm-hmm. And the people who are completely upset because they named their daughters Khaleesi and now they're not happy. They're really, really not happy. I have, like I said, there's a ton of memes online about this whole thing. And a bigger scandal than the Starbucks cup by a million.
Well, the thing about naming your kid Khaleesi, I mean, that's not her name. That's a title. You know, that's like naming your child princess or queen. So, I mean, at one point of time, you met several Khaleesis in a Dothraki gathering. So you see a bunch of Khaleesis. And you see a bunch of Khals. That's the king. So, I mean, Khaleesi that's just a title. So, you didn't have to name your kid after Daenerys, Khaleesi Daenerys. You could have named her after one of the other Khaleesis. Yeah, but you know what? There's a lot of different people named Cher and a lot of different people named Madonna, but you're only thinking about the one. Well, of course, with all of this going on, again, it reminded me how crazy fandom can get. I have seen online, there's a petition that's got, I forget how many hundreds of thousands of names. Yeah, but there was a petition about changing the Last Jedi too. So, oh yeah, exactly. There was that, and of course this petition demanding that HBO refilm the entire 8th season and fix everything. Spoilers, ladies and gentlemen, that's not going to happen. No, that's not at all. It reminds me about fandom and how sometimes fandom can go wrong. I think sometimes at our worst, we can fall into toxic ownership. And what I mean by that... Gatekeeping. Yeah. Yeah. But definitely what I call toxic ownership. I read this comic book when I was a kid. It belongs to me. Mm-hmm. I watched Star Wars for decades. Mm-hmm. It belongs to me. That cosplay girl is dressed up as my favorite anime character. How dare she? Mm-hmm. Well, you know how that goes. Yeah. And I think sometimes we can it can be very difficult sometimes when you're very much invested in something, that when it doesn't go in a way that you approve of, that it can be very difficult to let go of something when it doesn't go as the saying goes, your fanfic isn't canon. Right. And
Nicole Yvette Brown says that very often, and it's very apropos. And so a lot of people, I understand them being upset of it, but again, it's like people online saying this whole episode ruined 9 years. I've wasted 9 years of my life, and it was ruined. And we've only got one episode left.
That's it.
And
only one.
So some people are holding out hope that this is going to fix everything. And, just because it didn't necessarily go the way you wanted it to go, that doesn't necessarily mean it's broken. Now, I understand some people have said, and I agree, foreshadowing does not equal character development. And so, as like you said, you would have wanted more character development so that when Khaleesi, and let me use a wrestling term here, when she did her heel turn, that it was more believable and it wasn't But again, like I saw the pilot episode of the first season, and I mean, she comes out of the gate having a really bad day of it. Yeah. And so not trusting people makes a lot of sense now, but you have 9 seasons worth of development, and it feels like, she had come into her power. And yeah, someone makes a comment to her. There were scenes, and like I said, I haven't seen the show, but I've seen scenes out of it. And she's quote unquote selling a dragon to somebody, and he makes basically throws an insult at her in a language he doesn't realize she speaks. And she decides to, okay, well, he dies and all the soldiers die. Pretty hardcore stuff. So I don't see Khaleesi, I don't see her as a Pollyanna who just flipped the script and couldn't take it anymore. It seems like that there were seeds for this. Like I said, I haven't seen the show,
right?
But I don't think this came completely out of left field. It may be more of an issue of I didn't want to see this. I hate to say it, folks. If you're wanting to see it get reshot, I wouldn't hold my breath on that.
No, we have the prequel series, in development right now.
Right.
So you can, if you must, you can look forward to that. Maybe we'll get to see the wall built or something along those lines. So
yeah. Well, the only other thing I can say is I don't think that they could have developed more hatred in this episode without, say, bringing Joffrey in from
bring him back from the dead. Although, bring him back from the dead just to kill him again, just to see Arya kill him, that would have
you'd be down for that. But so now you have a new Joffrey. Enjoy it for one more show, because after that that's it. So, but and I have to tell you, we'll have to talk about that episode. You'll know more about it than I do, but I do want to get your thoughts on what you think about it and how you feel as far as an ending to an entire series of it, because they're gonna have to sew up a lot of stuff. I just know in the course of a 9 seasons of television, there's a lot of stuff that you need to, you need to end.
Well, people only watch the first couple seasons of Lost, and some people only watch Apocalypse Now until he gets there, and then they turn it off. So
that's true. Well, of course, the problem you ran into with Lost was they were basically just trying to come up with the weirdest things they could come up with, but they weren't that concerned with how are we going to tie all this stuff together?
Continuity.
Most of it was, hey, let's throw a polar bear in. Where did it come from? We don't care where it came from. And we'll do a smoke monster. Well, what's the smoke monster? Well, forget about it. So there was a lot of those questions they didn't bother to answer because they didn't bother to answer it for themselves. It wasn't going anywhere. It was just sitting, and this is literally people in the writing room said this. They just literally sat in there and said, what's the weirdest thing we could throw in here that nobody would see coming? A polar bear. Okay, there's a polar bear. And so, of course, when you get to the end of something and you don't have an answer, well, where did the polar bear come from? Well, we'll just ignore that and we won't go in. But I definitely want to talk to you next week about Game of Thrones, because I definitely want to hear how you felt it worked as an end cap and the end of the series. So we'll definitely talk about that next week.
Excellent.
And so with that said, we come to the end of episode 67 of the Geek Watch podcast. Thank you for listening, and tune in next week for the latest in geek news and views with the Geek Watch podcast. From Andy Petrie, this is Brian Hatcher, reminding all the Geek Watchers out there, we're all geeky about something. Be proud of yours. See you next time. Thank you for listening to the Geek Watch podcast. If you enjoyed this program, don't forget to like and subscribe on your preferred platform and share this podcast on your social media. For links to all the ways you can listen to the Geek Watch podcast, as well as leave comments and suggestions, visit our website at geekwatch.net. The Geek Watch podcast is a Hanging J production.